Hi, Ariana. We made it.
Hi. I'm
Hi.
so sorry about that.
That's okay. We're hoping everyone joins us again. We lost a few, so
Okay.
we're just gonna wait for everyone to come back.
Okay.
Um, I was just telling everyone the Toolbox series and kind of the thought process behind it. So at Prince Lionheart, where I'm a parent of five, but we realize that parenting is life's grand improvisation. We're all winging it as best we can.
Hmm.
And we realize that, yeah, you can take some parenting courses, but we really kind of do the best we can with the tools we have. And so the whole point of the
Exactly.
Toolbox series is to give parents more tools for the toolbox. And
Yeah.
that's done by talking to experts in their fields, such as yourself, and asking questions, finding out answers, and then sharing those answers with everyone so that we can all be better parents in our day to day and have more tools that are at our arm's length, so to speak. So that's the
Yeah.
point, and I thank you for joining us today.
Of
Um,
course.
we've got a few more folks who are tuning in, so that's great. And just so everyone knows, this is live. So if you have questions about breastfeeding, about anything that Ariana can answer or point
Hmm.
you in a direction, then please feel free to ask away. We do have a number of questions that have been submitted that we can kind of go through.
Hmm.
But really, I always like to start with how you found your way to your path, Ariana, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about yourself and how
Oh,
you
yeah.
became a lactation consultant.
Absolutely. 3 years ago, I was pregnant with my son, and I was a very overly confident parent to be.
I like that. You're actually the first person I've ever heard say that.
Oh,
Overly
yeah.
confident
Oh,
parent to be
yeah.
awesome.
I
I was
had
just an
help.
ignorant parent.
Well, now I know I was ignorant. But at that point, I thought I had it in the bag, right? I had helped my sisters
Awesome.
with their kids. I had fostered my 3-year-old niece for a year. And so I had, grown up around kids and helped my sisters and my cousins and everything. And
Sure.
so when I had my son, I thought it was just going to be perfect. And I already knew what to expect and everything. And then my son was born, and he was a terrible little sleeper from day one.
Oh,
His
wow.
sleep was just awful, and I would ask everybody for advice, and I tried so many things, and nothing worked. And so when he was 8 months old, I went to my own doctor, and I was going to ask to be put on postpartum depression medication and postpartum anxiety medication because I was just not handling being a new mom very well at
Sure.
all. And so my doctor asked me how was I sleeping, and I started crying and laughing at the same time because I did not remember the last time I had gotten more than like a 3 hour stretch at night of sleep. And so she referred me to work with a pediatric sleep consultant. And so after I did that, my life completely changed, and my son's sleep started, well, it came together for the first time ever. And so I finally felt like I was actually enjoying motherhood, and I was actually being present, and I was
Hmm.
kind of out of this fog that I was in. And so after working with the pediatric sleep consultant, I wanted to become one as well, especially because there's not very many of color out there.
Hmm.
And so I looked at my husband and I told him that's what I wanted to do. And he supported me 100%. And I quit my job and I started the course to become a pediatric sleep consultant. And then once I started working with families one on one, I started getting a huge amount of nursing families, right? And
Hmm.
they had a ton of questions for me, right? Night feedings, night weanings, how do I introduce solids while continuing to like keep my milk supply? And I did know some because I breastfed my son for 13 months, but I wanted to know more, and so I decided to get my certificate in lactation consulting, and so I've kind of merged the both fields together to
Nice.
be to be able to give a more of a wraparound approach to my families, and that way I don't have to send them to someone else, right?
No, that's great. That's excellent.
Mm-hmm.
Very
Yep.
cool. Well,
Thank you.
I hear you. You say some of those things about how to keep your milk supplies up, and I know how, I just don't do it. So I'm like,
Uh-huh.
natural weaning, because my little guy's almost 16 months, and
Uh-huh.
right now he's teething like a monster. He's just got
Mm-hmm.
molars coming in, and even though he's
Yeah.
not getting much, it's just the
Yeah.
comfort. And
It's
so I'm
comfort,
like this big old
exactly.
pacifier.
Yeah,
But
and
I'm
that's
like,
okay.
oh yeah, it's totally
Yeah.
fine. You know, the longer the better for me. But I'm just like, oh, buddy, like he rocked me last night because he was
Uh-huh.
just in pain. But it's
Aw.
funny, I like if I show him Motrin, he's like, if
He
I show
wants
him the
the
little
natural
teething
stuff.
tablets, he's like all day long.
Oh, how cute.
But he had a teething fever, the whole thing. So
Yeah,
I
yeah,
say that. Is that a thing?
yeah.
A teething
I believe
fever.
it is. Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
because I didn't know if there was like if that's one of the old wives' tales passed down for but I
Mm.
mean because I was thinking about it last night. I'm like, well, why would teeth coming out cause a fever?
Well,
And
everything's
as
connected, and their little heads are so little, and so when
yeah,
molars, especially molars, those hurt a lot
yeah,
when they're
he has a
coming
molar,
in.
and
Yeah,
yeah,
they're
gnarly.
pushing their way out, right? And
Yeah,
so yeah, a fever can be caused
the
by
thing.
it.
Okay, yeah,
Hmm.
because he had a storm in one last night, and I was like, oh, buddy, I'm so sorry. You just see this giant molar that's just,
Yeah,
oh, so sorry. I'm so glad we don't remember
exactly.
that.
Oh,
So.
exactly.
So anyway, okay, so we have all kinds of folks who are at different stages of
Hmm.
whether they're expecting or breastfeeding or having issues breastfeeding or what have you. So maybe if we want to just do kind of a overall kind of what are the top questions that you think or top information that you want to give to a general audience, and then we can go ahead and do a little bit of deeper dive with some specific questions. We keep all of our things to 30 minutes just so that they're kind of
Hmm.
bite sized and people can tune in and
Of
watch while
course.
they're doing what have you.
Hmm.
But if you want to start with kind of the nuggets that you think most often are
Hmm.
asked of you, then we can
Hmm.
go ahead and start there, and then I can fill in with some of the questions we've been asked specifically.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
Um, so, uh, well, yeah, I'll start off with some fun facts. Well, I
Sure.
think they're fun, right?
Yeah.
But the number one question every birthing person has is, will I make enough milk?
Yeah.
Right? We're also worried, will I make enough milk? Yes.
Yeah. Your
It's
body's amazing.
actually, there's more women who can produce enough milk than women who cannot produce enough milk, right?
Yeah.
So I really just think it's just, the society we live in now, breastfeeding is kind of lost its luster, I would say, like in the 70s, 60s, well, 70s, 80s. But I think it's coming back, which I think is absolutely amazing. But absolutely, you're going to be able to make enough milk as long as you are breastfeeding on demand when your baby comes in, right? Because when you our breastfeeding on demand, basically your baby is putting in its supply request, right? So it's telling your breast how much milk to make, right? So if you're feeding on demand, especially during those newborn stages, which is usually the first 4 months,
Yeah.
a lot of people also think like newborn stages might be just like the first 2 weeks, the first month. No, it's actually the first 4 months, right? So we want to feed
Yeah.
on demand throughout the whole first 4 months. And then from there, your milk supply has been established, right? And then baby's gonna start to give you longer stretches between feeds, usually 2 to 3 hours, right? But at the beginning, we want to feed on demand, and that way we are guaranteeing that our milk supply is gonna come in, right?
Cool.
So yes, you will make enough milk. Around 16 weeks pregnant, your body actually starts producing colostrum already, right? And a lot of people also don't really know what colostrum is. Colostrum should be the first food your baby eats, right? So it's very thick, it's kind of sticky and kind of goldish, right? So a lot of women think like their milk's gonna come in, like, as soon as they have their baby. No, actually, you have colostrum first for the first 2 to maybe even 5 days, honestly. And so
Yeah.
your baby at first is just drinking that colostrum. And once the colostrum clears out, then your milk comes in. And when your milk comes in, you're going to notice your breasts are going to be really engorged and they're going to be really hard and hot to touch, right? They might hurt a little bit, but nothing too much, right? And so again, we want to continue to breastfeed on demand so that baby can go ahead and take all that milk out and help your milk supply, um, you know, find its rhythm,
Yeah.
basically.
That's really
Mm-hmm.
true. The little regulators of our
Yeah,
production.
yeah,
And
exactly.
we call the colostrum liquid gold.
Exactly.
Of
Liquid
its
gold.
color, but it also is. I mean, it's the best stuff they can get. And
Mm-hmm.
if because I've had three. And if you never know how your birth journey is going to go, but if you find that you aren't, like my first, all of my kids were premature, but my first was
Mm-hmm.
not able to eat,
Mm-hmm.
and latch and breastfeed from me. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm pumping, but make
Exactly.
sure you save all of that, all of that.
Everything.
Save it
Yep.
all because it's all
Yep.
awesome and help later. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if they have a blemish, you stick some milk on it, and
Mm-hmm.
it's like Windex in my big fat Greek wedding. It's just like
Yeah.
gone magic. So
Exactly.
make sure, moms, you
Exactly.
save all that stuff because it's awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And the more you pump, the more you make, or the more you
Exactly.
feed, the more you make. I mean, and then your baby regulates it. So it's
Exactly.
pretty amazing how your
Yeah.
body responds to your little nugget.
Exactly. And then also I know you said, you were pumping at the beginning. Especially right now with social media, right? We see these posts of women pumping these large quantities of milk and having these huge milk storages in their freezer. At the very beginning, when you're pumping, 2 ounces is about the most you're going to be able to get. And when it's colostrum, it's even less, right?
Yeah,
And the reason why is, I mean, when a baby is born, their belly is the size of a grape, right? So how much can they actually fit in there? Not much, right? So if
okay.
you're pumping and you only got a few drops out, not even an ounce, it's okay. That's what your
Yeah,
body intended for your baby. It's totally fine. Save
yeah.
it and give it to the baby and then pump again the next time, right?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
I guess I never really sweated it much, but I've heard
Mm-hmm.
from other women in my journey that because it's coming from the breast and they can't see the ounces, they kind of
Mm-hmm.
freak out if they're producing enough or their baby's getting enough or
Yep.
what. What kind of assurances do you provide to the moms who are questioning that?
I would just say look at your baby's behavior, right? When they're eating, do they start relaxing? Do they start kind of drifting off to sleep? Do their hands go limp, right? If all of those things are happening, then he is getting enough milk, right? He's filling his little body up. And you can think about it yourself, right? When you're eating a Thanksgiving meal, for example, right? At the beginning, you might be super hungry because you haven't ate all day, right? Because you've been cooking. But
Yeah,
as you start to cook, you kind of start to relax and you kind of start to get sleepy and like you just start losing interest in the food, right? Because you're
yeah.
full. And so it's the same thing for the baby. Just
So,
watch their behavior.
what? Okay, cool.
Mm-hmm.
Um, all right. Okay. Are there any other kind of tidbits you want to leave before we get into some of the more specific questions that have come across?
Yeah, I know a lot of moms are always so worried, like when the baby starts sleeping longer stretches at night, right? Like, do I have to wake
Yeah,
them
wake
to
them up to
feed
feed
them?
them. No,
No, no, let them,
no, let them
exactly.
sleep.
Let them sleep.
Unless
Your
you're a
body,
masochist.
exactly.
You
Your
sleep too.
body, exactly. And your body's going to adjust, right? So
Yeah,
once your baby starts giving you 3 hour stretches, 4 hour stretches, maybe even 6 hour stretches, if you're lucky enough, right? It's fine, right? At the very first time your breast might be engorged and might hurt, right? But your
sure.
body's going to adjust, right? It's just, it's magical, honestly, the
Yeah,
way it
it is
works.
magical, right? I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
totally the fact that we can make a human and
Yeah,
then feed a human,
exactly.
like without even thinking about it. It's
Mm-hmm.
amazing,
It
amazing to
is.
me.
Yep.
Okay, so that's kind of the baby stage, the little
Mm-hmm.
itty bitties. Let's see, for the pregnancy, people have asked like how well actually pregnancy you kind of dealt with well because the colostrum starts coming in and all that sort of
Mm-hmm.
thing. So in terms of mom's duties during breastfeeding, I mean, we all think about, okay, we are what we eat, and what I eat ends up going to my baby. And, so any tidbits on what moms can pay attention? I don't know if that's covered by lactation consultants. Actually never used one other than when I had issues. And maybe we can talk a little bit about issues that come up like mastitis and galactose and all that sort of thing, when
Mm-hmm.
to seek help.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of nutrition, anything that you want to share with folks about what they put in their bodies because it ends up going to their babies' bodies, and also just in terms of like lotions and potions and hair dyes and all that sort of thing, right? They're, as
Mm-hmm.
long as they're feeding their babies, it's kind of making its way to baby.
Yeah. So the first thing you want to do is you're going to be hungry. You're going to be really hungry, right? A lot, and
Yeah.
it's kind of it passes over from when you're pregnant, right? Because when you're pregnant, you're hungrier because you're feeding too, right? You're feeding yourself and the baby, and
Yeah.
then you're still feeding too, right? Because you're
True.
producing milk, so you're still going to be hungry. And it's okay. So we want to eat an additional 500 calories a day so that we can
Okay.
continue to produce that milk. You're going to be incredibly thirsty, right? And that's fine. Drink as much water as you need. water, 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 water everywhere, right?
Yeah.
And this is what I do. And I'm a breastfeeding mom right now. My baby is 10 weeks old. And so in the morning, I refill all my water bottles and I kind of scatter them around the house, right? So that whenever I get thirsty, I have a water bottle and I can just go ahead and go for that. So you want to make sure you stay hydrated and you're eating 500 additional calories a day, right? A lot
Cool.
of moms are like really worried with what should I eat, right? You can eat whatever you want. The baby is going to adjust, right? Unless you start to notice that maybe they're really gassy, right? Then you kind of want to start like your process of eliminating certain foods to see what it might be, right? Dairy can sometimes cause babies a lot of gas,
Broccoli.
legumes, broccoli, yep, cabbage, so
Yep.
that sort of things. But every baby is different, right? Like my son, with him, it didn't matter what I ate; he was always fine. With my daughter, she's a little bit more sensitive, right, with her stomach. So I have cut out a few things, right? So that's why at the very beginning I tell parents, eat whatever you want until you start noticing that it starts affecting
Right.
the baby in a negative way. Then that's when you want to start eliminating things. But go ahead and eat whatever you want. Even if it's spicy food, right? The baby's going to adjust, and your milk is going to taste like that. Doesn't mean your milk's
Yeah.
going to be spicy, right? But it's going to taste like whatever you ate. So, I
Yeah.
mean, the more you eat, the more flavors you're introducing them to.
Yeah. That's true. But
Hmm.
spicy, I think it led to actually me having my baby early.
Uh-huh.
But
Yeah.
he also reacted to it when I drank it or when I
Yeah.
ate it in his milk. So yeah,
Yeah.
you just don't know because my daughter was like, "Bring it on," and my son,
Exactly.
no.
Yep.
So it is very
Exactly.
individualized. But okay,
Yep.
so
It is.
that's good for mamas to know.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to, let's talk about, so breastfeeding. If everything's going fine, latching fine, mom's breast health is fine in terms of no chafing, no, is there any time that you suggest like lanolin on the nipples or anything in particular for anyone who's having, well, if they're having issues, it's probably because the latch isn't quite
Mm-hmm.
proper, right? So
Exactly.
if mom is feeling pain, because it shouldn't be a painful process. My first time was exceptionally painful. At
Uh-huh.
some point, it was like breastfeeding razor wire, and I
Uh-huh.
was in tears, and I wanted to quit, but I ended up seeking help. And what I found interesting was I tried to go back to my OB, and she was
Mm-hmm.
like, "Nope, once the baby's out,
Exactly.
move on." Right? And I was
Yep.
like, "Whoa!" But I'm like in excruciating pain here. I
Uh-huh.
ended up having a galactose, which
Oof.
a lot of people haven't heard about, but it was
Yeah.
basically like a golf ball sticking out of my chest.
Oh
It was
my
clogged
goodness.
milk ducts that
Yep.
ended up milk that was stuck in there, and I had a golf
Mm-hmm.
ball sticking out of my chest, and it was like breastfeeding razor wire.
Yeah.
So they ended up having to go to a breast surgeon who aspirated it. So that's kind
Oh
of like
my
the
God.
worst case
Yeah.
scenarios. But
Exactly.
maybe talk to moms about what isn't normal and
Mm-hmm.
when and where they can maybe go seek help
Yep.
rather than like just grinning and bearing it, because it's not meant, breastfeeding is not
Mm-mm.
meant to be painful.
No, it is not. And the moment that you start feeling pain, I want you to go ahead and look at the latch, right? So is the baby actually latched on, or is there a hole somewhere in between their mouth, right? Most of the times it's because the baby, it doesn't have a full latch. And so when they're sucking, right? They're also gasping at air, right? Because their latch isn't sealed correctly, right? And so that's when you're going to start noticing some pain. Or when like the latch is too short, right? Um, Meaning that the baby just has like the tip of the nipple, right? And it's so funny because
That
I that hurts. Yes, that hurts. And there's a reason why it's called breastfeeding and not nipple feeding, right? You want them to get
good point, Anna.
yeah, a big amount of your breast right into their mouth, and so that way the nipple is so far back in their mouth that it's not causing you any pain. But yes, the moment you feel pain, usually when you have a baby in the hospital, right, they have IBCLCs on staff or CLCs on staff that kind of make the rounds. Nurses are pretty well versed as well in breastfeeding. So if even if it's the first time, right, latching and you feel some pain, I want you to go ahead and get that nurse in there. I want you to ask for help. I want you to listen to everything they have to say, right? Because a lot of the times when you go home, they might have pointed something out to you, but you didn't have that issue at that time. So you just ignored it, right? And then when you get home, you're sitting there thinking to yourself, like, oh my God, I wish I would have paid attention. I know that happened to me with my son, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But yes, it should not hurt at all. If you feel any kind of pain, then I want you to go ahead and seek some help. A lot of the times, too, midwives now they're becoming more popular, which is great. And midwives do stick with you, right, for a little bit longer after you have the
Like your
baby.
OB. Yeah.
Yeah, and they can go ahead and assist you with that as well. But yes, seek help the moment that you have pain, right? And I know a lot of like CLCs, myself included, right? We can do virtual lactation consultations.
Mm,
So especially right now because of COVID, if you still
true.
feel, and I completely get it, right, with the newborn, if you don't want to expose them to somebody else, right, and have somebody else come into your house or you go out, then seek a virtual consultation, right? And right now with video, right, and Skype and so many different video formats we can use, we can really get in there and see that latch as well virtually as well.
Okay, great.
Hmm.
Yeah. And I remember when I was first shown by someone in the hospital, I was surprised by how abrupt they were with smashing my baby's face in my boot.
Uh-huh.
And I was like,
Yeah.
holy cow, like easy there, Tiger.
Yeah.
Because I'm like this delicate little flower, and they're like, no.
Oh, yeah,
and,
babies.
and yeah, and then once they learn, then
Hmm.
they're like, oh, this is the way, and they figure it out. And I remember one of the nurses telling me that the reason babies' noses are so squishy is because don't worry about them getting smothered in your breast
Exactly. They're still going to
because
be
they're
able to
little
breathe.
squishy noses and
Uh-huh.
they breathe, right. And I just
Through the
thought, oh,
sides.
brilliant. Like they're all designed. It's designed to work, right?
It's
Perfect.
yeah, it really is. And I know a lot of moms, especially when you have like larger breasts, right? You are concerned, like, can they
Mhm.
breathe? Yes, they can. And you
Yeah,
explained it perfectly well. Like the cartilage in their nose is still not very defined. So their nose squishes and they're able to breathe through the sides.
which is
So
amazing.
yeah,
So perfectly designed. Um,
exactly.
all right. So let's see. For those who, let's talk a little bit about um, formula for those who supplement.
Mm-hmm.
I supplemented a few times with, I guess, my second, well, really my
Mm-hmm.
third, because sometimes I just had to be away and
Mm-hmm.
pumping. I mean, hands off to moms who are breastfeeding because it's hard work. It's hard
It
work.
is.
Working moms who have been in storage cupboards or bathrooms or
Uh-huh.
whatever. I mean, I've been in bathrooms. I mean, it's just hard
Uh-huh.
work. It's hard work.
It
So
is.
hats off, first of all, to everyone who's doing it because it's a lot of work.
Exactly.
But sometimes there are times when formula comes into play, whether it's supplementing or if you aren't breastfeeding, you can't breastfeed. Then do you have
Mm-hmm.
any knowledge or kind of have you heard of any brands that you kind of like the sound of in terms of as close to breast as
Mm-hmm.
possible without any of the extra junk? It seems to me I've
Mm-hmm.
bought two brands of formula, both of
Mm-hmm.
which have been recalled.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Oh, yep.
Total bummer, right? Because
Uh-huh.
I did my research and I got
Yep.
one from Europe and then one from here, and they both got recalled. And I was like, come
Uh-huh.
on. But do you have any, because I know that there are a lot of people who do both or are breastfeeding and then have to go to formula. There's no
Uh-huh.
guilt, right? It's just,
No,
it is what it is. But do you
exactly.
have any brands that you actually have, like, would get behind?
Yep. So, with my son, I was a working mom, right? And so I
Hmm.
was pumping, like you just said, in a closet
Yeah.
somewhere for work until we
Right.
finally redid it and made it more comfortable
Yep.
for us. But I used Gentle Lease, which is Infamil, right?
Okay.
And so that worked really well with him, right? His tummy was able to take it, and it was really good for him, and it's pretty gentle, and it's pretty comparative to breast milk, right? And so that's why I went with that one.
Okay.
With my daughter, I thought it was going to be the same thing, right? And so I went ahead and I bought another one of those,
Yep.
thinking like this is going to be perfect for her, and it just does not sit well with her tummy, right? And she has a more sensitive tummy. So for her, I went ahead and I did my research, right? And I was trying to look for, something that's a little bit more sensitive, even than the one
Hmm.
that I had. And I found it's cabrita, and it's goat milk, right? And
Okay.
booby as well, which is derived from goat milk. And so I like both of those, and they seem to be, sitting pretty well with her as well. But
Cool.
you definitely want to look for a formula that's going to meet your baby's needs, right? And so a lot of the times, I tell parents too, like, don't necessarily go get like the Costco size, right,
Yeah.
of the baby
Right. You need
formula.
trial and error. Yeah.
Yeah, because you don't know if it's gonna sit well with them, right? And so a lot of the times I also say sign up for all of the free samples, right? Because
Yeah.
you really never know, right? You never know if you are gonna need formula, right? And it's good
Mhm.
to have it on hand, right? And
Mhm.
when you get the sample size, you're able to try it out, right? For a day, 2 days, 3 days, see how they, how sits with them, right? In particular. And if it doesn't, then you can just throw it away and not feel bad about it, right? Because you didn't buy a Costco
Yeah.
size of it.
It's really true. Um,
Yep.
okay. Well, there was, in terms of weaning, so we've gone from kind of baby through to um, mom
Uh-huh.
issues, when to seek
Yep.
help, how to kind of find the balance and not like overtax yourself because formula can play a role in
Yep.
everyone's. And then when it comes to like weaning, kind of trying to, my challenge
Mm-hmm.
is trying to break my bad habit of feeding to sleep
Mm-hmm.
because it really hard for anyone else to put him to bed if I'm not.
Mm-hmm. If you're not around.
So I've been struggling with that. He does take a bottle well, but he kind of gets, let's just face it, he gets pissed when it's not me.
Uh-huh. Yep.
So any tips for trying to transition older kids into maybe better habits and or more flexibility, or uh, anything like that that can help parents who are kind of in my boat?
Absolutely. So, and that's really normal, right? The last feeding of the day is usually happening as they're drifting off to sleep, right? The
Yep.
easiest solution to do is just move up that last feeding at the beginning of the bedtime routine, right? So
Okay.
let's say you first do bath time, pajamas, story time, and then nurse. Let's go ahead and move nursing up to bath time, right? And then once you're done with that nursing session, then do bath time, pajamas, story time, right? So
Okay.
just alternating the way that you do things, right? So that then that way they can stop that sleep association. They can
Yep.
start like separating a little bit more, right? It still has to, it's still part of their bedtime routine, but it doesn't mean they're exactly falling asleep, right? Which also can also help them in being awake for the full feeding and actually taking in a full feeding, right? Because a lot of the
That's
times
true.
as they're, yeah, a lot of the times as they're
You end up
drifting off to
lopsided.
sleep, exactly, exactly, because they end up falling asleep and they didn't,
Yeah.
get the rest. And now you're over there having to pump just from
Yeah.
one, right? So that you can feel better.
Yeah, true, true.
Yeah.
Okay,
Hmm.
gotcha. Okay, well, we have a live question and then another question.
Of course.
Yeah, they seem okay. So there's live from May. I started supplementing as I'm trying to wean my baby in a few months, and I feel kind of guilty. Um, don't feel good.
No, don't feel guilty. No, and especially right in motherhood, I know it's going to creep in for so many different reasons, right? But
Yeah,
do not feel guilty, right? You're doing the best that you can and you're doing the best thing for your family and for yourself, right? And that looks so different for everybody, right? So don't feel guilty. You have to do what's right for you.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, okay, another one. My baby's 6 months old, and I'm planning to stop breastfeeding when she turns one. I want to know,
Hmm.
how do you prepare your body to stop producing milk without getting clogs or mastitis?
So you want to start slow wean, right? A lot of people have this, desire, and I get it, right? When you're done, right? But that doesn't mean you should just go cold turkey from one day to the next. The reason why is because it's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt you, right? And you are opening up yourself to mastitis and clogged ducts and all of those bad case scenarios that we don't want to happen. So we want to slow wean, right? Which honestly, most children do on their own once they're introduced to solids, right? Because they find it to be more interesting and they're exploring new flavors and new food and new texture and all of that. And so they're going to start only asking for milk, right? Like right before nap time or right before bedtime or maybe after nap time or after bedtime. And so at that point, it kind of becomes more for comfort, right? Which is totally okay. So I would say once you're down to maybe like two feedings a day or one feeding a day, then that's when you're good to just completely cut it off, right? But what you don't want to do is you don't want to go from 8 feedings a day to no feedings a day, right? The very next day. So I would say, just kind of go with the flow of what your child is wanting. And once if you get to the 1 year mark, who knows? You might just think to yourself, I'm only feeding her once right before bedtime. I can do this for another year, right? Or I could do this for another 3, 6 months, whatever it is. So I would just say be open to the process, and allow your child to kind of guide you, right? Unless you're having a lot of issues, and you really want to stop yourself, then there's, ways to do that. And I would say every third day, cut out a feeding, right? So that way you're kind of doing the slow process yourself.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I actually had to cut cold turkey. Poor little
Mm-hmm.
thing. She really
Yeah.
liked boob, but I was
Uh,
pregnant. I know that you could
oh.
actually lose the baby if you're breastfeeding.
Mm-hmm.
It puts you at higher
Yep.
risk of the baby. So I said,
Mm-hmm.
no more. That's for your new brother. and
Yeah.
it was overnight. And,
Uh-huh.
and she did okay. And I did okay. But I think she was older, so I must have been down to a few feedings. I don't even remember.
Exactly.
Mommy brain is, they've sapped so much of
Oh
my
yeah.
brain. I remember.
Yep, that's true. I mean, I think about it too with my son, and I'm like, I don't remember experiencing this, right? But you forget, you really do.
Yeah, I think that's part of the design, right? It's all a
It
perfect
is.
part of design because then you keep having more babies because you forget
Yep,
the pain, you forget
exactly.
all the not so fun moments. No, but
Exactly.
they're amazing. It's awesome. It's
Hmm.
I think it's life's hardest
Yes, absolutely.
journey and certainly job.
Uh-huh.
My day job is far easier than my mom job because
Yep.
I get to be in control of my time and so much more. But I mean, it's the most
Uh-huh.
rewarding ever.
Yeah,
Best thing on the planet. So, all right. Well,
absolutely.
Ariana, I appreciate your time and your
Of
questions. I
course.
got a lot of ground covered in terms of kind of general as well as some specifics. And I love it, May. You're like, that's for me too. She asked both those questions
Oh,
specific
good.
today. But
Good.
um, if anyone has any additional questions, you guys can feel free to find Ariana. She's
Hmm.
at Step by Step Baby Consulting. And
Exactly.
ask any questions. We will go ahead and post this live on our site and tag Ariana. We'll also post it on YouTube so you could always find it. And then we also do a transcript and we put it on our website so that and you feel free to do the same so that anyone can refer back and kind of find the
Hmm.
nuggets that we were able to glean today. So thank you so
Exactly.
much for your time.
No,
Appreciate
thank
it.
you.
Thanks for helping the families all over and the
Of
moms
course.
who are on a heck of a journey, but a very
Yep.
worthwhile of breastfeeding.
Exactly. Yep, it is.
Awesome.
It's incredibly rewarding.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really had a good time. And yeah, if anybody has any more questions, feel free to, look me up on Instagram, send me an email. I'm more than happy to answer them for you.
All right. Well, thanks so much,
Yep.
Ariana. Take
You're welcome. You
care.
too.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.